Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. I'm Alora Murray.
And I'm David Osmond.
And this is going to be a really fun podcast. But before we get to it, David, you are one of the busiest people I know, so I hesitate asking you this question. But is there a hobby you have that you just love? Yes.
I would say my hobby currently is being able to just, of course, find every moment to be with my family, support them in all the activities, whatever that is, just hanging out at home, having fun, watching my girls play soccer and just excel. That is kind of like the hobby. I'm just loving my family. Growing up as a kid, I had a few different things. I was always on tour and performing and singing, so music was the hobby that we loved to do. I love playing my guitar, writing songs, singing songs, learning new ways to play something. But I did, as a kid, we were in the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts.
Right.
That was one of the things my dad made sure we did. We could not get our driver's license till we got our Eagle Scout. So I got into some leather work with some of the merit badges. I love to make like leather belts and watch bands, and I would go to this store called the Tandy Leather Store, which was on State Street in Orem, and I'd buy all this stuff. I had no idea what I was doing, but I got into it. That, and I would say models, like model planes and trains and cars. So like you glue this stuff, you put those together, and just I really love that.
I love that. I love that. I mean, for me right now, some of my favorite hobbies are really like, as I've gotten older, I try to find hobbies that can relax me. Obviously, like I really enjoy running and reading, but two of the things that I love that when I tell people, they're like, really? I love paint by numbers and I love coloring.
I have a song in my head about paint by numbers for those apps. My kids play them and it's just stuck in my head because it's hours of it, right?
Well, I'll roll it out and it comes with the paint, and I'll sit there and I'll turn on some of my favorite music like Ella Fitzgerald, Etta James, and like those songs really soothe, like they're really relaxing to me. So I'll sit there and paint, or I'll get coloring books, and I will just, it's so relaxing to me. Yeah. And I've never been that person that's been able to draw or has been super crafty. So those, I always feel like, I'm like, look at what I've done.
It just reminded me, I totally forgot about this, but we would be in Branson. We would be doing 2 shows a day, every day but Sunday, and this was in Branson, Missouri. And so we had a lot of time at this theater during shows, before, pre, and after. So we'd sit side stage before we do our numbers and our events. I just had to kill time because we're in small, tiny spaces. Somebody introduced us to cross-stitching. And I don't know, I mean, it sounds weird, but we'd sit there and it was just almost a therapeutic focus. I'd sit there and I would do these crazy cross stitches in between the sets and running on stage and all. But it became like I don't know, what do you call those things? The where you pop it. You just have to finish the puzzle. Like it's like absolutely. It became almost obsessive.
Yeah,
so
I remember being in elementary school doing something called string art, and it was so soothing. And you've ended up creating something. Which, I mean, this guest on this podcast, Elizabeth, Kari interviews her. She owns Quilter's Candy, and she, just talks about quilting and how she got into that and all of that stuff. So
it's a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah,
my mom pulls out those big, what do you call them? The stands, the quilting stands. It's one of her thing. Every time one of her sons, because 8 boys, got married, she would make a huge quilt. It was her thing. She has to do it. So we'd all help make those quilts, and she would do it a ton. But that's it. A lot of people. It's a huge subculture of people that love this.
Absolutely. Elizabeth has actually been on the show before, but we were only able to do our 3-minute segment. So I'm super happy she was able to come back, chat with Kari about her passion for quilting and how that others can try this talent and hobby she has. So what do you say we take a listen?
She's got a passion for it. Let's check it out.
Today's podcast is going to be so much fun. I am chatting with Elizabeth Chappell. Elizabeth, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you. Okay, let's just start with, where did your love from quilting begin?
It's so funny. So I grew up and my mom was a quilter. So one would think, oh, it's from your mom. But no, I mean, I just didn't fall in love with it till I was a bit older. So I had a friend who we were best friends. We'd go walking every day, and her mom is a fabric designer for quilters. And she invited me to this big trade show for quilters. And when I went there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like the fabrics are so cool and beautiful. And so she taught me how to quilt. And now, I told my mom and she was like, well, hey, whatever it takes. I'm just glad you like it. So.
Oh, well, and I think everyone knows, or most people would know at least, that what a quilt is, but what defines a quilt?
Yes. Okay. This was new for me when I got in the quilting world. They were like, it's not a blanket. Quilters get offended when you call it a blanket. I was like, oh, noted. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so a quilt is made by hand and you sew together the top. So you cut up a bunch of fabric, sew it together. That's just the quilt top. And then you add the quilt top with batting and a backing. And quilting it is the act of like sewing those 3 layers together. So
Okay.
that is a quilt.
Okay, that's so interesting to know. So don't call it a blanket.
Right? I mean, I don't care, but there are quilters who do care. So
Okay. What do most people do with finished quilts?
a lot of people give them away. I am not one of those. I really cherish them. So I hold on to them. Our house is filled with them. I decorate with them. Our kids build forts with them. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, really decorate and use them, I guess.
Well, and I can see how you want to hang on to them because it's very time consuming, or can be at least.
It is.
Do you have a fun memory from your childhood that you could tell us about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in regards to quilting, even though it didn't call to me as a child, my mom did hand quilt. And so our living room, like she would put her big quilt up with these, I don't even know what you call them, like things to kind of hold the quilt in place. And she and her friends would get together and they would all just hand stitch the quilt together. And we as kids would play underneath it and run and hide. And like, it was just a fun memory.
Oh, that's so cute. I feel like, I don't know, for some reason, quilting brings community. It's so fun to do in like groups with friends or girls' night, families together. And then, like you said, you have fun memories from when, you were little with quilts. What do you think you love most about quilting?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've asked my husband, like, why have I stuck with this? Because my whole life I've been like hopping from thing to thing to thing, and this one has stuck. And he's like, well, his observation is very accurate. It appeals to the artist. Like I'm able to really be creative and find different fabrics. And so I love like this color looks great with that color. And then figuring out which pattern I want to use. And I design my own patterns, and the art of seeing it come together as you're sewing. It's just, I don't know, it feeds all the creative checklist things that I have.
Sure. Well, and you loved it so much. You started your own business. What inspired you to start it?
So this is also funny. I'm more of an entrepreneur than I am a quilter.
Okay.
So I really started quilting because of a business. Like I wanted to start a business and I was like, oh, here's a niche. Like I knew enough about business to know you want to have a pocket of people who spend a lot of money, who are congregating, who are devoted to what they do. And quilting was that thing. So I was like, well, I'll start a business here. And then I started the business and I'm like, well, I better learn how to quilt. And then I fell in love with quilting. So it's a little bit different of a journey, but that's how I got there.
Very cool. I'm sure you faced a lot of obstacles as you started your business. Can you name a couple of them?
Yeah. I mean, one that's really interesting that I don't know. I'm like, do I talk about it? But so most of my business is on Instagram. And one would think the quilting community is just super, super friendly, but no matter what, on social media, there are some people who just are a little bit mean. And so the more you put yourself out there, the more you kind of hear some negative things. So that's been really interesting, and not necessarily all negative. Like it's been really good for me to like grow thicker skin and learn how to deal with people, nitpicking. So that's been an interesting thing I didn't expect. And then, just learning how to grow a business, learning how to market, how to make your product better, how to get people to buy it and know about it, all of that.
Sure. What do you think is the key to success for your business, and when did you start?
Yeah, so I started the business in 2016. That's when I sold my first product. And then the key to success, I talk a lot about this, and I think it's true for any business, no matter what area you're in, but to find a niche or a niche, whichever you want to call it.
I know. I
But
think I go back and forth. I think I say niche. What do you say?
yeah, I
Niche?
like niche. It
Yeah.
sounds like very French and I don't know, fancy.
It sounds fancy. Absolutely. Let's go with niche.
Niche it is. But yeah, to kind of stand out from the crowd, you want someone to look at your product and have it be recognizable. Like, oh, that's Elizabeth's. I can tell because of XYZ. So if you make a quilt, whether it's the colors you use or if it's modern or traditional or whatever, you just want it to be very unique and to kind of be on brand. I don't think of brands that you love and they have, it stands out. You can pick it out in a crowd.
Okay, that's good advice. So make sure it's recognizable. What do you think is recognizable about your brand?
Yeah, it's evolved over time and it takes a while to figure out what that is. But these terms might be kind of weird for you, but I like a scrappy quilt, which
Okay.
means a lot of different fabrics. So it's scrappy. Yeah, scrappy quilt. And I kind of like an heirloom type of a look. So I like the big, thick thread that's hand quilted. It gives it kind of a handmade heirloom look.
Uh-huh.
And then the colors, I prefer more soft, earthy, like browns, peaches, pinks, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, when I was looking through your website, that's kind of the vibe I got. Yeah, like the lighter colors, very relaxing, very calming. And quilting is so cool. It's not just for, like, I think people think it's a certain group of people. It's for everyone. Can you talk to us about that stigma around quilting?
Yes, it's so funny. So when people ask what I do, for a while I didn't tell people. And my husband would be like, oh, she quilts. I'm like, don't tell. But I own it now and I'm like, I'm a quilter. But I generally get like, oh, that's a dying art, which it's not. Or like, oh, you're so young. My grandma quilts. I'm like, yes, I know. But there is, especially if you go on social media like Instagram or TikTok, there's like a whole generation of younger people who are quilting and it's very modern, very hip and cool, if I may say so myself. Maybe people are like, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, Elizabeth, but no, there really is.
I think you make it very hip and cool. I think
thank you.
You're leading the way. I mean, it is very hip and cool because of you too. And if you have people thinking, okay, you know what, I've always wanted to get into quilting, what advice do you have for them if they're thinking of picking up that?
Yeah, so for sure, get a good machine. And, people are like, what on earth makes a good machine? But if that's a whole nother conversation, but get a good machine, because if you're using a machine that's terrible, you're going to hate the whole process. So get a good machine and then take a class. There's so many online, or go to like a local quilt shop and just have someone teach you the ropes, because reading a quilt pattern for the first time, there's words you're not going to understand. So just, make that barrier to entry a little bit less. I do have a pattern. It's called Better Together, and it's a total beginner friendly pattern that assumes no prior knowledge. Because my big thing is like, come and see how cool it is. Give it a try. You're going to love it. But you got to figure out kind of the world of quilting first,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what about maybe starting with classes? Do you think that would be good advice for someone thinking like before they invest in all of the tools and the machine and everything, maybe just start taking some classes?
Yes. And if you know anyone who quilts, oh my gosh, they would love, I can speak for any quilter. They would love if you were like, I would love to quilt. Can you kind of show me how to do it? Oh, they would be ecstatic. Like, oh my gosh, yes, come on over. I'll show you. So if you know anyone who quilts, reach out to them. And I know that they would love to teach you.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice. And I'm sure it can be so much fun to quilt together. In your opinion, what are the benefits of quilting?
Oh, actually, I've done some research on this.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is definitely a correlation between quilting and like positive mental health. And I started researching because so many people were like, I was going through a hard time, or going through depression, or whatever it might be, a big life transition. And I started quilting and it was so healing for me. And this just came up over and over again. So I started looking, and there is something healing about, I don't know if it's just kind of the monotony or the using your hands, the creativeness, kind of being with yourself and thinking, but there is something very healing about quilting.
That's so good to know. I mean, I agree with you. There's something to be said about being creative and being proud of something that you're doing yourself. And then maybe you prefer doing that by yourself. So it's kind of like your alone time, good for your mental health, or you're doing it with groups of friends and being social, so there's the social element that can be fun. Do you often find yourself quilting alone? And do you think it's good for you to be doing by yourself, or do you like to quilt with friends?
A bit of both. And the quilting world's very interesting this way because there's quilt guilds throughout the world, and they meet every month. And you go in person and you can sew together, you share what you've made. And I mean, I just went and visited a quilt guild 2 nights ago, but they literally meet all over the world. So wherever you live, you can Google like a local quilt guild and you can meet quilters in your area. And there's lots of quilting retreats where people go and they quilt with friends. But really, a lot of the majority of it's going to be at home. And so I think there is something about that healing process of just kind of sitting with your thoughts, but yet being productive and doing something. Yeah. So it's both with friends and alone.
Yeah. And then, and you have the choice of maybe sometimes you're like, okay, I need a minute. I just want to be by myself and quilt and do my thing. Or I am feeling social. I'd love to get together and do it with a group of people. So, okay, that's good advice. What's a frequently asked question that you get from people?
Well, a big question is what sewing machine should I use? And then once you get started quilting, there's questions of like, how can I make this better? I realize that my points aren't touching. I mean, just some technical things that people want help with. Yeah.
What do you think is the hardest part about quilting? Is it the time? Is it the...
Well, okay, it could be a couple things. One, it's not a cheap hobby. So, buying a machine, buying fabric, it's not cheap. When I first started quilting, I was like, oh, I get it. You can save money and make your own quilt. And my friend laughed. He's like, no. It's not to save money. It's because we love making. I'm like, oh, okay. So the cost, it could be a bit of a hindrance for some people. And then I guess that very first, just learn. It's a very, very scary thing for people. Like, well, I'm not a perfectionist. That's the thing I hear a lot. I'm not a perfectionist and I don't have the time and the patience. And so I think that's a misconception that if people give it a try, that they realize, oh, I actually can do this. Like, I'm not bad at this. It's doable.
Yeah, doable. Okay. Other than the obvious, like the machine and everything that we're talking about with what you need, what tool is essential for all quilters?
An iron. Well, I say an iron. Okay, a rotary cutter. Let's go more basic. A rotary cutter.
Okay, I mean, we can talk about a few. Yes.
Okay. So, a cutting mat. It's a self-healing cutting mat. You set your fabric on it.
Okay.
And you use a rotary cutter and a ruler. And the rotary cutter, it's like a circle blade with a handle, and just push it along in a circle and it'll cut your fabric in a straight line. And then you need a ruler to put next to it so that you cut in a straight line and it's not all, wobbly.
Okay. I've seen that. Are they like the green, the cutting mats like underneath? I think I've seen them with like the...
green mat is so ugly. Yes, there's the green one, but I have a white one because I take pictures and I want pictures to be pretty. So yes, the green mat though is like the quintessential. Yes.
It comes in colors. Okay, good to know. Different colors.
Yep.
Okay, so the cutting tool, a ruler, the mat, a machine. Are those like the four main things
thread.
you need?
Yeah, you need to have thread as well. And yeah, those are like the main staples. And fabric, I guess you need to have fabric.
How long? Yeah, you kind of need fabric for a quilt.
Yeah.
How long has your longest quilt taken you? I'm so curious to know. Do you know that answer?
Yes. But I will say I probably finish faster than most people because it's for my job. And so I'm like on a deadline.
Okay.
So the longest it's probably taking me was 3 months.
Okay.
But, and then the quickest was probably like 2 days.
Oh, that's pretty fast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And an average quilt, I probably spend a couple weeks.
Okay, but there really is something to be said about putting in hard work on something that you're creating, and the satisfaction that you get from that. Are you used to that now, or are you like, hey, I did good. This is so cool.
Oh, I'm proud of everyone. And I'm like, I remember my mom as a kid, like, come and look at my quilts. And I'm like, I know no one's going to appreciate it to the level that I do, except other quilters. Other quilters do.
Sure.
But yes, there is definitely like, I made this. My gosh, I'm so proud of this. You guys check this out.
Oh, very cool. I remember for my wedding, somebody suggested that we have a quilt at like the table when people walk in and then they can sign it. So we had someone
love
create a special quilt with our colors, and then we had a marker. It's like hard to think of like someone writing on it, but everyone signed it, and we have that to cherish, for the rest of our life. And that was that. I think there's so many things you can do with these quilts that are kind of like out of the box.
I love that idea, and I might run with it in some form or another in my life. I love that.
It's a really
gift.
it's a really special thing that we have. Do you think, we talked about it for being all ages. What if you wanted to include, what if someone's listening thinking, this might be fun to do an activity with my daughter or my child? What ages do you think this, how old do you need to be?
Okay, I love this so much. So when I started this, in 2016, I had little kids. And actually my son was in kindergarten at the time, and he was so interested in quilting. He just thought it was so cool. He'd sit there and watch me, and he was like, "Can I try?"
That's awesome.
And he could, and he loved it. And I think as soon as they're interested, and they have fine motor skills, like if it's an infant, obviously, you don't want them at the sewing machine. But if they can hold a pencil and paper and draw and cut with scissors, then they're old enough. And if they're interested, let them try. Because the younger they are, the more they're just like, well, I sewed that together. And they're not going to be like, that wasn't perfect. They'll just love it. So I think the younger, if they're interested, go for it,
Yeah. Well, and I think spending one-on-one time with mom or dad, or, I think that's special to them. It's a fun little memory that you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. What are your top tips for quilting?
Well, first of all, give it a try. If there's any part of you that's like, I'm kind of intrigued, just give it a try. And then my next biggest tip is find a pattern that you just want to have so bad, so that you are excited to finish it, and pick fabric that you absolutely love. If those things are in place and you're so excited about it, that will get you through any moments where you're like, oh man, I'm having a hard moment. You'll be like, oh, but I'm so excited about this. This is worth it. And then once you finish it, you'll be addicted. So just jump in, find the things that you're most excited about making, and the rest will come.
That's really good advice. Elizabeth, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I'm really interested in quilting now, so I'm gonna be looking into it. This is
good. Yes. Well, hey, I've got a free pattern. Anyone who wants a free pattern.
It's amazing. Okay, thank you. And as we're wrapping up, we like to do what we call Fresh Five and get to know you a little better. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. First one, it's brunch. What are you ordering?
Oh, French toast. I know I shouldn't, but that's what I'm getting.
No, I think you should. French toast is so yummy. Love that. Okay, next one. You're on a flight. Where are you headed?
Ooh, London.
Ah, that's a bucket list of mine. I would love to go London. Have you been?
Yeah, I lived there for a little bit, and I would move there in a heartbeat if I could.
Okay, London. Okay, next one. Do you like being at home, or do you like getting out of the house? Are you more of a homebody, or do you like being, or a mix?
I am a homebody.
Okay, good to know. It probably helps with what you do, being
it does,
home doing
it really
quilts.
Does, yeah.
Next one, very important. Regular fries or sweet potato fries?
Sweet potato.
And they're healthier, from what I hear.
Are.
From what I hear.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. What is your favorite holiday?
Oh, Christmas, hands down.
Ah, me too. Just so like something about, I don't know, depending on where you live, but like the snow, when you get the snow here and it's so quiet, and just the
music, the food, the family, all of it.
The magic, the lights. I think that's what I love. Just lights everywhere. Okay. Yep. Elizabeth, this has been so fun getting to know you. Thank you for all these tips and tricks, and congrats on all of your success. And if people want to follow you, where can we go?
Yeah. So I have a podcast called Craft to Career. And that's really taking your craft and turning it into a career. But for quilting, Instagram, it's quilters_candy.
Okay, perfect. And for that pattern, we'll link it here too.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
It's a great beginner pattern. So
you're awesome. Elizabeth, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And thank you for listening to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. Please rate, review, and subscribe. And we will see you next week. Congrats, you made it to the end. If you want to continue to freshen up your day, you can watch us on Fresh Living every weekday on CBS Channel 2 in Utah at 1 o'clock. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, KUTV Fresh Living, and follow us on social media. We will see you next week.